Welcome to Business Bedtime, the place where the world of business keeps you company as you get ready for sleep. Here there's no rush, no noise, just real stories, fascinating data, and the story behind the companies that move the world. Tonight we're going to talk about a company that almost everyone knows and that, if you know it, you very likely love. A company that has spent decades defying the logic of retail, that pays its employees 30% above market rate and still has enviable operating margins, that offers the lowest prices in the sector and yet attracts consumers with extremely high purchasing power, that carries 40 times fewer products than its closest competitor and yet sells 15 times more per product reference. Tonight we're talking about Costco, the third largest retailer in the world. A company with 130 million active members, with a membership renewal rate that exceeds 90% globally and 93% in the United States alone. A company whose private label brand sells more than Nike, more than Coca-Cola, and more than United Airlines, each one separately. But to truly understand Costco, we have to go much further back. We have to meet a man who was born in the Bronx in January 1916, the son of Jewish immigrants from Belarus who arrived in New York as teenagers, poor, with nothing but the desire to work. His name was Sol Price. And this is his story.
Riz.
Wash him, 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 wash him. Sol's parents worked in the textile factories of early 20th century New York. The very same factories that became tragically famous for the inhuman conditions in which they operated. Endless shifts, blocked emergency exits, no ventilation, no rights. It was precisely in that environment that some of the deadliest industrial fires in American history occurred, tragedies that sparked massive protests and gave rise to the first organized labor movements, including the seeds of the socialist and communist parties on American soil. Sol Price grew up seeing that. He lived it through his own family, and that experience marked him for life. He was a brilliant student, so brilliant that he was advanced 2 years in school. When his family moved to San Diego during his high school years, he met the love of his life, whom he married, and with whom he built a family. Like many of the great entrepreneurs of his generation, Sol remained faithful to that first love his entire life. He studied law at the University of Southern California, USC, an institution he would later become one of its most generous donors to. He graduated and opened his own law firm, specializing in advising entrepreneurs and small businesses.
Vializi Iman Sa. Iwinawal Iman Simal Iman Sa.
I can't quite ever suict, and it was there, while reviewing his clients' financial statements, that he found the thread that would change his life, and the retail industry, forever.
Woo.
One of Sol's clients was a jewelry store. Sol reviewed their numbers regularly and noticed something curious. The biggest buyer for that jewelry store wasn't a luxury chain or a department store. It was an organization called Fedco. Mars. Fedco was a nonprofit association created for federal government employees in the United States. Its model was as simple as it was powerful. You paid a one-time $5 membership fee, and in return you gained access to products at significantly lower prices than in any conventional store. They weren't trying to maximize profits. They only wanted to cover operating costs and deliver value to their members. Sol looked at the numbers. He studied them, and he reached a conclusion that very few would have seen clearly at the time. That model, that combination of membership with low prices and high volume, was a perfect value creation machine. So he did the obvious thing. He called Fedco and proposed opening a similar store in San Diego under a franchise or partnership. Fedco said no.
War.
They weren't interested in expanding. They were fine where they were. Growth wasn't their goal.
Get a Lou.
Sol listened to the rejection. He processed the information, and he made a decision that defines the character of great entrepreneurs. If he couldn't do it with them, he would do it on his own. The Mali Gids, I say, bididiandir, we once said abidarmia, Rio Lai. In 1954, Sol Price opened FedMart in San Diego. The name was deliberate. It took advantage of the positive mental association people had with Fedco and added the suffix Mart, which decades later would become universal in retail. In fact, when Sam Walton founded Walmart years later, he borrowed that same suffix from the model Sol had pioneered. FedMart operated as a membership club. The initial fee was $2, and access was restricted to government employees. Unlike Fedco, however, FedMart did operate for profit. Sol wanted to make money, but he wanted to do it with integrity and by delivering real value to the consumer. The results were immediate. FedMart generated 4 times what they had projected in its first year of operation. But the most important thing wasn't the money. It was the clarity of values that Sol established from day one. Values that, decades later, would still be at the heart of Costco. Now, give the customer the greatest possible value. Offer fair wages and good working conditions. Practice honesty in all operations. Be loyal to suppliers and investors.
Nez.
Sol Price didn't call them corporate values. They were simply the way he believed business should be done. Vuck.
Obaru.
Over the following years, FedMart hired a 22-year-old recent college graduate who came on as an intern. His name was Jim Senegal, and although no one knew it at the time, that young man had just stepped into the place where he would learn everything he needed to revolutionize global retail. FedMart grew to 45 stores. In 1959 it went public, raising $2 million, a modest amount even for the time, but enough to keep expanding. They developed a chain of gas stations with prices below market rate, using them as a hook to attract customers to the stores. They explored the private label concept, which was relatively new at the time, and they opened pharmacies with noticeably lower prices than the competition. Everything was going well, until Sol made the mistake he himself would later recognize as the worst of his business career.
What?
In 1970, tired of day-to-day operations, Sol sold 75% of FedMart to a German businessman named Hugo Mann. He didn't do proper due diligence. He didn't thoroughly investigate who the man was or what his true intentions were. A year later, Hugo Mann fired Sol and his son Robert. Voley. What Mann wanted, it turned out, wasn't FedMart as a business. What he wanted was the real estate portfolio FedMart had accumulated over the years. The stores, the land, the strategic locations, the business itself mattered little to him. Sol and Robert left, but they didn't leave defeated. Father and son sat down to analyze what they had built with the cold precision of surgeons. What had worked in FedMart? What hadn't? Where were the real margins? Where was the money being lost? And they found something that, in hindsight, seems obvious, but at the time required uncommon clarity to see. FedMart had two major components: the retail stores open to the public, and a central warehouse that supplied those stores. When Sol and Robert examined the numbers in detail, they discovered that the stores operated on very tight margins, barely enough to cover costs. But the warehouse, that wholesale distribution operation, was enormously profitable. Why? Because a warehouse doesn't need to unpack products. It doesn't need to put individual labels on them. It doesn't need to place items one by one on shelves. The supplier arrives with a full pallet. The forklift takes it to the right aisle, and the customer takes it directly from the pallet. The operation is radically more efficient. You need less staff, fewer processes, less infrastructure.
Where's at this we have that math quiz?
So Sol and Robert asked a question that would change everything. What if we completely eliminate the stores? What if we make the warehouse the final destination for the consumer? But who would want to shop in a warehouse? Who would buy full pallets of products? Small business owners.
Why things stationed?
Restaurant owners, stationery shops, small grocery stores, people who needed to buy in large volumes but didn't have the space or capital for their own distribution warehouse. Sol and Robert envisioned a shared warehouse. If we combine the buying power of hundreds of small business owners under one roof, we can negotiate prices that none of them could get on their own. That's how the Price Club concept was born. Price Club opened its doors in 1976 in San Diego. It was a huge gray warehouse with no aesthetic pretensions. Customers walked in, took products straight from the pallet, and left. There was no background music, no floor staff explaining product features, no decoration. It was functional to the extreme, and that was exactly its strength. In the first few months, however, Sol and Robert faced a problem they hadn't anticipated. It was hard to convince small business owners to pay a membership fee and then keep paying for the products. The value proposition was real, but it wasn't intuitive. It required the customer to do the math and visualize the long-term savings. So they made a pragmatic decision: open the doors to families as well, to heads of households, to people who simply wanted to buy well and cheaply for their homes. And something interesting happened. Many of those heads of households turned out to also be small business owners. And when they came to Price Club for their household shopping and saw the prices, the connection was immediate. If I buy cheaper here for my house, why not buy here for my restaurant too? The strategy fed itself, and Price Club began to grow. There was another foundational moment in Price Club's history worth pausing on. One day, hot dog vendors operating carts on the nearby streets approached Sol with a proposal. There was so much foot traffic going in and out of the warehouse that they wanted to pay rent to place their carts at the entrance. We have that math quiz. Sol thought about it. Instead of accepting, he decided to do something more ambitious. Buy the sausages from those same vendors and run the hot dog stand themselves inside the facility. The price of the hot dog with a drink was set at $1.50,
Wow.
and it stayed there. Decades later, when Costco inherited that legacy, the price of the hot dog with a drink was still $1.50. In the middle of a global inflation era, with food prices skyrocketing worldwide, Costco kept that price unchanged. When the media asked Costco's current CEO how it was possible, the answer was simple: that price isn't a product, it's a statement of values. Today, Costco sells approximately 130 million hot dogs a year. Put in perspective, that's almost one for every 3 people in the United States. We have that math quiz. When Costco wanted to integrate that operation vertically and reduce costs, they went as far as building their own sausage production plant. That way they guaranteed quality and price without depending on any third party. While Price Club was growing on the west coast of the United States, something notable happened in 1979. The company had become such an attractive investment that, organically and without any active management on its part, it accumulated more than 500 individual shareholders. Someone had sold shares to a friend, that friend to his brother-in-law, the brother-in-law to his mother. And it turned out that U.S. law states that a company with more than 500 shareholders must make its financial information public, whether or not it is listed on the stock exchange.
Now Messi stat.
Price Club became a public company without having conducted a public offering of shares, an unusual case in the country's corporate history. 3 years later, in 1982, it was formally listed on a stock exchange, and it was right around that time when one of the most curious episodes in American retail history occurred. Sol Price, always generous with his ideas and knowledge, went out to dinner with Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. During dinner, Sol explained in detail how the membership model worked, how the warehouses operated, how negotiations with suppliers were structured, and the logic behind having few products and high volume per item. Sam Walton listened attentively. He took mental notes. And just a few weeks later he began building Sam's Club. Sol never expressed resentment about it. He had a clear philosophy: ideas have no owner. Execution is what matters. And Sol's execution didn't stop there. Years later, an entrepreneur named Bernie Marcus found himself in a situation similar to Sol's. He had built something valuable and was pushed out of his own company in a hostile takeover. He sought advice. Sol listened, understood his situation, and told him something that would forever change the home improvement market in the United States. He told him to apply the same warehouse model, but to the world of construction and home products, and he shared all his operational learnings. Bernie Marcus did exactly that. He founded Home Depot. We saw Laos, we taste her. Without intending to, Sol Price became the intellectual father of 2 of the most successful retail chains in American history. Price Club continued to grow, but decided not to expand into the Pacific Northwest of the United States. There were no plans for Seattle, Portland, or that stretch of the Pacific Northwest. That's when Jeff Brotman, a Seattle entrepreneur, saw an opportunity. Brotman contacted Sol and asked if he could operate a Price Club franchise in that region. Sol said no. Brotman, far from giving up, was completely direct. If you won't give me the franchise, I'm going to copy your model exactly and open something of my own. You've already explained it publicly. Half the world already knows it. Do me a favor and give me the missing details, or just watch me build it. Sol responded with a calm that few would have had. Go ahead, do it. It doesn't affect me. But Brotman needed a partner with real operational experience, someone who had lived the model from the inside. He tried to convince Price Club's director of operations to join his project, but that man had too much loyalty to Sol to leave him. However, that same director suggested he contact someone else, someone who had grown up in that model since he was a 22-year-old intern. Someone who already knew every angle of the operation perfectly. Jim Senegal. Brotman and Senegal partnered up. They raised $7.5 million from investors in exchange for 50% of the company. They recruited the best operational talent they could find, many of them with direct experience at FedMart or Price Club. They gave the company a name derived from its central concept, cost. COSTCO Wholesale Corporation. Costco opened its first store in Seattle in 1983. In less than 3 years, without massive advertising, without big marketing campaigns, purely through word of mouth and the shopping experience, it reached $1 billion in annual sales. That growth rate had no historical precedent for any company in any sector. 2 years after being founded, Costco conducted its initial public offering. De rue May, Vartena Fords de Supply. Meanwhile, Price Club and Costco operated in parallel, without seeing each other as enemies. They shared information and had mutual respect. In a way, they were sister companies born from the same founding mind. I was med. In 1993, they decided to merge.
How?
The merger was announced as a combination of equals, with Price Club receiving 48% of the new entity and Costco 52%. Strictly from a financial standpoint, Costco was growing faster and could have waited a few years to negotiate better terms. But the human relationship between the founders weighed more than the numbers. Together, the two companies were valued at $16 billion. And it was at that moment, with the merger freshly completed, that they made one of the boldest and, in hindsight, most brilliant branding decisions in retail history. Woolies at Tradier's Day. They decided to unify all their private label brands under a single name. There would no longer be different private brands for different product categories. There would be just one, for everything. On one defriza, they called it Kirkland Signature. Wasai. The name came from the city of Kirkland, Washington, where Costco had its corporate offices at the time. It wasn't a romantic or aspirational name. It was simply the name of the place where they worked. But what that name would come to represent over time would be something completely different. Das ist. Today, Kirkland Signature is the best-selling private label brand in the world in its category. It represents between 23 and 25% of Costco's total sales, excluding gasoline in the United States. When gasoline under the Kirkland brand is included, that percentage rises to 33%. Vila, its best-selling products include toilet paper, bottled water, and an extensive range of foods, supplements, clothing, and household items. Though as royalty, there are well-founded rumors about the origin of several of its products. It's said that its batteries are made by Duracell, its diapers by Procter & Gamble, and some of its sportswear by Lululemon. Costco never confirms or denies these associations, but the implicit message is powerful. You're buying first brand quality at private label prices. And the most interesting thing isn't what Kirkland does produce. It's what it deliberately does not produce. Costco avoids entering categories where consumer preference is deeply tied to a specific brand. Cola drinks, for example. People have strong loyalties to Coca-Cola or Pepsi. In that field, a private label would have very little to gain. Instead, in categories where the product speaks for itself and quality is directly verifiable, like a protein bar, a jar of almond butter, or a liter of olive oil, Kirkland can compete and win without difficulty.
Though.
Rymulfs. Now let's talk about the business model itself, because that's where the real genius of Costco lies. A genius that isn't obvious until you break it down. Costco operates with an average gross margin of around 12%. To put that in context, Walmart operates with an average margin close to 24%, double. That means that for every product Costco sells, it keeps significantly less profit than Walmart. But that isn't Costco's real business. Its real business is memberships. Approximately 70% of Costco's operating profit comes from membership fees, not from the products, from the membership. Why is this so relevant? Because the margin on memberships is practically 100%. There's no product cost, no distribution logistics, no manufacturing. It's pure income. That allows Costco to do something no other retailer in the world can do. Commit to never exceeding 14% margin over the supplier's cost. If a product costs them $100 to acquire, Costco will sell it for a maximum of $114. No exceptions. No matter how high demand is. No matter if there's a shortage in the market. Thus, that rule is internal. It's not a public marketing promise. It's an operating policy applied with rigor in every category, every store, every country.
What?
Rise some. There's another element of the model that deserves special attention. SKUs. The number of product references available. A conventional supermarket handles between 40,000 and 120,000 different product references. Different brands of the same item. Different sizes of the same product, different flavors, presentations. Desas, we have that math quiz. Costco handles approximately 3,800 references. Vimni, 3,800.
You saw förberedelse sauce.
That means that in every category, Costco offers very few options, usually just Kirkland and one or two recognized external brands. You don't have 7 options of peanut butter. You have 1 or 2, period. This sounds like a limitation. And yet the data says the opposite. Rahul, VLY. Costco customers rarely leave without finding what they were looking for. Why? Because Costco shoppers are some of the most sophisticated in the sector. They aren't people who go to a store and take whatever's on the shelf. They are market analysts specialized by category. Costco's chocolate buyer follows global cocoa, milk, and sugar prices. He knows exactly when he can negotiate and when he can't, and he negotiates from an exceptionally strong position. For many suppliers, Costco is the second largest customer in the world after Walmart. A supplier doesn't say no to Costco. There's a particular phenomenon at Costco that industry analysts call the treasure hunter. It represents approximately 15% of Costco's total sales, but its impact on brand loyalty and the shopping experience is disproportionately large.
Demolse.
What does it consist of? A permanent rotation of seasonal or opportunity products that appear in the store for short periods and then disappear. Items that may be available for 2 or 3 weeks and then never return.
My awake.
The logic behind this is more sophisticated than it seems. Costco buyers contact winter clothing manufacturers in the middle of summer when their production lines have idle capacity. They place a large but limited order. Not the 10 colors in the catalog, just 3. Not during peak demand season, but months earlier, when production doesn't disrupt the manufacturer's normal flow. In exchange, Costco gets extraordinarily competitive prices. And in August, the customer walks into Costco and finds high-quality winter jackets at a price they won't see anywhere else. They buy. Because they know that if they don't buy it today, tomorrow it might be gone. That urgency, that feeling of discovery, is what creates entire communities of Costco enthusiasts. Social media accounts dedicated exclusively to documenting the month's finds. Specialized influencers who walk the aisles filming what's new. A shopper culture that feels like it's participating in something exclusive. Now let's talk about Costco's operational efficiency, because it's one of the most fascinating aspects of its model. Lee's Hive. Costco turns its inventory every 26 days. That means that, on average, any product that enters its warehouses is sold and leaves in less than a month. Why is this relevant? Because Costco pays its suppliers in 30 days, but it sells the product before it has to pay. In practice, consumers are financing Costco's inventory. The company buys, sells, collects, and then pays the supplier with money it has already received from the customer. Corporate finance specialists call this a negative cash conversion cycle. In most companies, you pay first and collect later. At Costco, you collect first and pay later. It's like having a permanent, interest-free loan from your own suppliers. And yet Costco pays its suppliers in 30 days, much faster than Walmart, which in many cases pays in 90 or even 120 days. That makes suppliers prefer to work with Costco. Better price for the supplier, better relationship, more trust, which in turn translates into better purchasing terms for Costco. It's a virtuous circle that reinforces itself. Let's also talk about how Costco treats its employees, because there's another business lesson there that isn't obvious. Costco pays on average 30% above market rate in its employee categories. Its benefits include health insurance, retirement plans, and working conditions considered among the best in retail. Conventional financial intuition would say that destroys margins, and yet the reality is the opposite. Employee turnover at Costco is remarkably lower than in the sector. Training a new employee costs money. An experienced employee who knows the processes, knows where every product is, and understands how to treat members has real, measurable economic value. Costco understood this before almost everyone else. Costco executives have an average of more than 25 years with the company. That's not accidental. It's the result of a culture that values stability, experience, and loyalty as strategic assets. As for memberships, the psychology behind how they work is just as interesting as the financial model they generate. When someone pays an annual membership fee of $60, $75, or $120, depending on the tier, something happens in their brain. They feel the need to justify that expense, to get their money's worth, to go more often, buy more, and make sure the numbers work in their favor. Behavioral economists call this the endowment effect, the idea that we value more what we have already invested in, regardless of whether it makes rational sense in the future. In a gym, that same effect makes people pay the monthly fee and not go. At Costco, it does exactly the opposite. People pay the membership and go more, buy more, and feel like smart shoppers while doing it. The result is an extraordinarily loyal member base. Costco's global membership renewal rate exceeds 90%. In the United States, it exceeds 93%. In the world of subscribers and memberships, those numbers are exceptional. Now let's look at Costco's current numbers in perspective. The company has approximately 861 stores worldwide, Walmart has more than 10,000. But in terms of market value, Costco is worth around $382 billion compared to Walmart's $549 billion. The gap is much smaller than the number of stores would suggest. Costco's valuation multiple, that is, the number of times its price implies over its earnings, is around 46 times. Walmart's is 29. The retail sector average is 19. Both companies trade at a significant premium to the industry, but Costco trades at a premium on the premium. For losses, why does the market assign such a high valuation to Costco? Because of the promise of future growth. Costco has increased its revenue around 10% annually for more than 30 consecutive years. That sustained pace, combined with growth levers that have not yet been fully activated, is what justifies such an aggressive valuation. What are those levers? International expansion. More than 80% of its sales are still in the United States. It only operates in 14 countries. The growth potential outside its domestic market is enormous. Ways, Kirkland's signature in categories where it still doesn't have significant presence, such as personal care and health products, and the general growth of membership wholesale commerce in emerging economies where the model has not yet penetrated deeply. Costco stock has grown approximately 200% in recent years. For reference, the S&P 500 grew around 73% in the same period, and Walmart around 78%. And CRF. Before we close, there's a reflection worth making about what Costco represents as a business model. In a world where margin maximization is the ultimate metric, where companies constantly look to charge more for the same thing, where customer loyalty is treated as an asset to be exploited, Costco chose the opposite path.
One for Radel.
It chose to pay its suppliers more than strictly necessary. It chose to pay its employees more than the market demanded. It chose to charge its customers less than it could have. It chose to grow at a pace that allowed it to maintain operational quality rather than grow fast and lose control. And the result, 30-some years later, is that those decisions didn't weaken it. They strengthened it. Because a supplier who trusts you negotiates better with you. Because an employee who feels valued works better and stays longer. Because a customer who feels they are being treated with honesty renews their membership year after year and recommends you to their friends. Costco's model is not anti-capitalist. It is deeply capitalist, but with a long-term vision that many companies don't have the patience or conviction to sustain. Sol Price saw it all from the beginning. He wrote it into FedMart's values in the 1950s, and those same values, with small changes in form but none in substance, remain at the heart of Costco today. That's all for tonight on Business Bedtime. You've heard the story of a company that began with the son of immigrants who saw how his parents were exploited in a Bronx textile factory and decided that if he ever built something, he would do it differently. The story of a lawyer who looked at a jewelry client's numbers and discovered the business model of his life. The story of a 22-year-old intern who would one day become the co-founder of one of the world's most successful companies. The story of a merger between sister companies that gave rise to one of the most loyal brands in retail history. The story of Kirkland, of the $1.50 hot dogs, of full pallets in the aisles, of shoppers who analyze the price of cocoa to negotiate with their chocolate suppliers. The story of how you can build a business by being honest with everyone involved in it. Close your eyes. Let that last idea stay with you as you fall asleep. See you tomorrow.